Welcome to this podcast of Healers of the World. This is our first one. My name is André Visch and I'm here with two friends. One is Jeroen Berndsen. He is a guide in transformation and he guided me. So maybe I will record this podcast. So he will start. He will be the co-host. And we have Jacques Theron, also a friend. And they will introduce themselves. And Jeroen, please can you introduce yourself to the audience?
I can. Thank you, André, for inviting me and us. It's nice to be here in Amsterdam. It's the place where I was born, 1983. Professionally, what you say, I'm a guide in transformation. And I start in my 20s to help people and organizations with their transformation processes. And later on in my journey, I'm more specializing also the personal way of how you can transform outside yourself from your inner perspective. And in the past 2 years, I learned more and more in that field, also with breathwork and other techniques. Yeah, but I think we have a lot of time today to dive deeper into that. Yeah,
thank you. And Jacques, we met 4 years ago. It was very inspiring. We had some very special sessions. I had some very special sessions with you. We will talk about that later. So I think it's very interesting to have you here in the first podcast. Can you tell me something more about your work?
Well, I guess my main focus is with transformation, spiritual transformation specifically. But some of the techniques I use for that are breath work, conscious breath work. I call it ecstatic breath work or sacred journey breath work. They're different styles. But the amazing thing is that simply by changing how you breathe and breathing, let's say, within a sacred space, with a sacred intention, you bring about huge transformation. But apart from that, my interest lies in mythology and symbolism and the transformative power of the archetypes, the let's say, spiritual archetypes or mythological archetypes, which have an intelligence of their own. So I work a lot with the archetypes to help bring about transformation and healing on various levels.
Okay. And how did you end up into this work?
I just always loved it. I always loved mythology. And then when I was about 19 or so, I started studying the tarot and astrology and alchemy specifically. And then from there, I kind of discovered breath work. It was my own journey. It was my own, let's say, search for answers in my life. And it was so transformative. It was so incredible what happened in my life and how my life transformed personally, that I just knew this was what I had to do with my life, with my time. And then sort of in my early 20s, I started learning how to do it. And then I started my own practice. I mean, it's a bit of a cheek, at 22 or whatever you're old, doing that sort of thing so early, but it was really a passion and a calling.
Can you tell me something more about the experience you had, because that made you start into this work?
Well, I think the main thing was, first of all, realizing that I was studying psychology at the time, and then I was also working with breathwork, doing my breathwork apprenticeship. And I just realized very early that you can't heal yourself through your head. You've got to heal yourself energetically on a visceral level. So from session to session, and that was also where I was introduced to the principle of manifestation. As you transform your inner world, your outer world also transforms. And I really saw that very tangibly in my life. The rebirthing breath work I did at the time was kind of themed sessions from week to week. And in the week that we worked with abundance, let's say, I saw new abundance in my life. In the week that we worked with love, I saw big transformation in terms of love situations. And it was very tangible changes. It was very measurable changes that I actually saw in how my life unfolded. So that was where I really saw how, and I think maybe this is part of the theme that we're going to be talking about today, as you heal the inner world, the outer world starts to reflect something else back to you, or you start to resonate differently with your world, with people around you, so that transformation, number one, is quite easy, and number two, it's actually quite quick. It's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing journey, but it's actually quite easy.
Oh, thank you. So the outside world, that's also my opinion, is also a reflection of your inside world. So everybody wants to change the outside world, but you have to start within yourself.
Exactly.
How does breathwork work in that way? Can you explain?
Yeah, there's many theories or there's many understandings, explanations. The way that I have come to understand it, it's still a bit of a mystery. The way I don't really approach it from, let's say, a scientific level. I approach it from a more spiritual perspective, in that...
It's nice too.
In that what we're breathing spiritually is prana. And of course, you know, in yoga, you've got pranayama, you've got different breathwork techniques. But what we're actually breathing is pure prana. Prana is the life force energy, the chi in Chinese medicine, which is the pure life force. So when we just breathe normally day to day, like we're maybe breathing now, we're breathing kind of to survive, or we're just breathing to keep the system going and the system balanced. But most people breathe wrongly anyway, but, you know, day to day or when they're stressed. But when we start to breathe consciously, when we make our breathing deeper and when we change our breathing rhythm and when we breathe with an intention, we're actually filling ourselves up with so much more prana. And that prana, which is an intelligent life force, starts to work in the body. It starts to kind of scan and see where there are blockages, where there are imbalances, and then it starts to correct those. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, I think sort of even more importantly is as we open this channel, as we open ourselves inside, as this rebalancing takes place, then that extra prana kind of knows where the balance is internally, and somehow externally we change our resonance. We change what the energy that we're giving out, and therefore what we can attract back changes. And I think the power of this is that we're actually taking this prana energy, this etheric energy, making it visceral, putting it into the body. The body is processing it, and then from there we change our resonance.
Okay. And Jeroen, you were working in transformation, and then you discovered also this breathwork, and it inspired you to take a part of apprentice of a student of breathwork, and now you're a breathwork therapist also. Can you tell me something more about this?
Yeah, maybe it's nice to share where it starts, because I think it was 2022, and I was in a challenging period with myself. I think the theme in that period was love for me, and I was in a point in my life that I was so struggling in expressing the love for a specific woman. And I was struggling a whole year with the emotions in that year. And I was chatting with a good friend of mine, John.
Mm-hmm.
And
we know him all.
We know him all. We were together in the Himalayas, the four of us. But I was so struggling, and I did a lot in my spiritual life in discover myself. I learned a lot of techniques, but in some point I was stuck, and I couldn't heal that for myself, and I couldn't come further. And I was on a point that I said, John, I need therapy, and I'm looking for a place in Portugal. And then in a specific moment he says, Jeroen, do you really think that is helping you? And I said, no, I don't know, and I don't think so, but I don't know how to go deeper in this specific theme, what is, I think, my most major theme in my life to solve. And then a couple of days later he advised me he said, I know a man, and I saw his newsletter that he's giving a retreat in Costa Rica, a breathwork retreat. And so 2 weeks before the retreat I fly in, and I met Jacques in Costa Rica. And there we did 5 days of breathwork. And if Jacques offers a retreat of 5 days, then different breathwork techniques are giving a place. And I can say now that was for me so transformative, especially I think it was day 2 that we did rebirthing breathwork in water, in a hot spring in Costa Rica. And When you do water breath work, you do it always in couples. So one other person is carrying the other person in the water and warm water, and you're doing connected breathing in the water to go, what Jacques was sharing, to go deeper into your inner world. And on a specific moment, I was carried by Mark, a guy from the United States, and he clapped me on my shoulder, and I came out of the breathwork session and I said, "Okay, Mark, are we finished?" Because it was a little bit rough what he was doing there. And he said to me, "No, man, you stopped breathing, so breathe again." So I was a little bit confused, think what is going on here? And I continue the connected breathing technique. And then when we were finished, he asked me, "Did you see what happened?" And I couldn't see it fully, but I felt there's happened something, but it was difficult for me to give it words or give it pictures. And but then Mark shared with me at the moment that I stopped breathing, there came a string or a cord.
Like discoloration in your skin.
Yeah, coloration of purple and red into my neck. And then I got goosebumps because I knew that was my birth, that I had my cord around my neck, and that I stopped breathing because when I came into this life, there was no breath and my heart stops at that moment. And with heart massage, I came into this life. So, but I was a little bit confused, so I walk in the water to Jacques and I asked Jacques, "Can you explain to me what happened here?" And then Jacques could give me in a couple of sentences. He could clarify what happens there and how my experience was related to my birth and how my birth created a situation.
Or imprint, maybe.
Yeah, an imprint, how my relation is with my mom, and a deep imprint of insecurity. And therefore, a deep insecurity also in my relationships with women, specifically. And maybe it goes too far to go deeper into that. But for me, it was so surprising that Jacques could give in a couple of sentences something what was really clear for me. But I could feel it in my body, and in the days afterwards, my whole body was releasing. I become sick. Fever, and not sick, but I saw how my body was releasing from that specific breathwork exercise and technique. And I could see in the days afterwards also what Jacques was mentioning. I could see in the days and the weeks afterwards how I perceive life differently and how different things happened out of that experience of that week. And then I saw I did a lot in transformation work, what you know, but I saw this is it's so direct and it goes so deep that for me it was so clear that I needed to go deeper into that and wanted to share that to other people, because I can say in the years that it totally transformed my life. And I thought I knew something about transformation, but in the years I see, especially to learn this kind of techniques, how much more there is to discover in the world of the unknown. And that is totally transforming my life. Yeah. Still now.
I think if I can just jump in here, I think also really, I think that's a really good example of what I was explaining before of, we have almost like the cellular memory, but it's almost like a cellular memory or an imprint that's based on, let's say a trauma. And then the body kind of takes that as a given, or it takes that as a norm. But then when you bring in this prana, when you enter that trance state, your state of consciousness expands. So then your inner healer, let's say, your inner being can readjust according to your truth, so that you're not living with these imprints anymore, as an illustrative example of how that works. So it really is very much also about the trance expanded state, not only that you experience, but that your body can reconnect to and sort of reset.
Back to the factory.
Yeah, back to the factory settings, exactly.
But maybe that's also interested to share, Jacques. Everybody has his own imprints and his own birth. And what I learned from you, there are many specific ways how you can come into this life.
Yes.
And that is an important part of the rebirthing, what you mentioned.
Different birth types which kind of set different psychological patterns in motion.
Exactly.
And we kind of come with this imprint, and we sort of see through this filter of certain psychological things. And then when we learn to break that filter, we can see with greater clarity, or we can energetically attract different energies into our lives.
Can you give some more examples?
Well, I think a very common one is a held back birth, for example, where there is something that goes wrong in the birth process, where it takes a long time, and where the fetus believes that they're not going to make it, they're close to dying. So there's that panic of, I'm being taken into a new world, but I'm getting stuck, and my time's running out, for example. And that's something that's quite common. And that held back birth, all these different birth types, in many cases, they become patterns that we repeat in our lives. So whenever, for example, let's say if you were a held back birth, and then in life you want to give birth to something new, like a new project or a new relationship, that imprint kicks in and you go into that same psychological state. So a held back birth would be the feeling of getting stuck, getting frustrated, feeling helpless, feeling you're going to die, and then that causes certain subconscious sabotage, let's say, of a new project or a new idea. That's one example. A cesarean birth it kind of doesn't give space for the unfolding of the birth process. So everything, whenever there's change or whenever there's something new happening, it feels like an emergency situation. It's like being in the emergency room again. And then, of course, in Jeroen's case, with a cord around the neck, that it's kind of like a double bind. It's like I want to come out, but I'm still held back, and I'm still being pulled back. So the birth types are, it's not for everyone that the birth type is, let's say, traumatic. We obviously get trauma through birth, or we get trauma in the early years of our lives and through different experiences. But that's maybe one of the puzzle pieces that make up the psyche of the subconscious.
I remembered we once talked about maybe it's the whole idea of the spirit to have a kind of handicap to come into this life because they want to develop some special skills.
Absolutely.
Do you think so?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. We've got let's say, a certain script or a certain contract, and we have to come in with certain conditions so that we can learn maybe to become unconditional or to be without conditions, so that we can, be free and enter our true spiritual path or our true spiritual calling. I think we've got a soul calling, but then we've got certain conditions that we have to overcome in order to find the soul calling.
Yeah, it will help you to find your path.
Learn the tools, yeah.
So it's not always bad what happened to you.
It's certainly never bad. No, I don't think it's bad. I think what's bad is if we don't transform those conditions that we come in with, because then we are at the mercy of those conditions. So, even though those conditions might be, terrible, people have terrible trauma, people have terrible issues they have to work with. But the magic comes when we learn the lesson of that, and we learn to let that go, or we learn to forgive that, so that we can become our true selves, not our conditioned selves.
I know you also studied shamanism with a Peruvian teacher, I thought.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Can you explain something more about that and tell me how it helps you with this breathwork?
Well, breathwork and shamanic practices are very much about trance states or altered states of consciousness. So it's in that expanded state that we can, let's say, get out of the conditions, get out of the imprints, let's say from birth or from trauma, and we get an expanded perspective. So, breathwork is one way. I kind of call it the clearing in the forest. So if the clearing in the forest is our state of truth, or our state of connection to love, or our state of connection to healing, there's different paths into that clearing in the forest. And you can actually equate those to neuroplasticity and creating the neural pathways that open new ways of behaving or understanding. So through that expanded consciousness, we are able to see what's happening in here, and we're also able to see what spiritual aspects want to come in, be that divine guidance or guidance from the soul, or further vision or greater understanding of what we're doing. It's so there are different ways in to that central place. And, shamanic practices will maybe work with medicine plants or they will work with chanting or with ecstatic dance, for example. And what I do find fascinating is all cultures at different points, maybe not Western culture at the moment, but all cultures at some point had ecstatic or trance practices as very core practices to any spiritual experience or religion. And it could be argued that early Christianity was also an ecstatic religion, but that then sort of became dogmatic, or that sort of went in a different direction. But
that's interesting. Can you tell me something more about that?
Well, I mean, my very first calling, or one of the most powerful callings for me to spirituality, was reading about the mysteries of Eleusis, the ancient Greek mystery religions and mystery schools. And their symbolism was very much about rebirth and having such profound spiritual experiences, such profound epiphanies, that their lives were changed afterwards forever. And the mystery schools of Eleusis were well known in the Roman Empire, and they were in Athens and Greece, and they were at least 1,000 years older, let's say, than in Roman times. But by the time of the Roman Empire, that spread, or awareness of that spread. And that, of course, was when Christianity was starting, and a lot of the language used in early Christianity, like, the sacrament, the communion with Christ, drinking of the holy sacrament, which was exactly what happened in Eleusis. You had the drinking of the kykeon drink. And the kykeon, for example, was made of barley. And there is evidence that barley had an ergot fungus growing on it. And that ergot fungus is similar chemically to LSD, for example. So the mysteries of Eleusis were never... nobody was allowed to reveal what they were about. But the kykeon, the drink, was central to that. And then, as you go into Christianity, the Holy Communion was also the drinking of this holy sacrament. And the, let's say, ecstasy or the ecstatic experience of Christ and of rebirth is very much the same symbolism and very much the same terminology that was used by the other mystery schools. I mean, Eleusis wasn't the only mystery school that existed. But Christianity was known as one of the many mystery cults of the time. Another one being the cult of Mithras, for example. And so that, in my humble opinion, is where some of that ecstatic experience of Christianity started, of experiencing, even the terms like, I'm reborn, I am saved, I have found redemption is very much the same experience as a shamanic experience, let's say, because it always is about the letting go, processing, releasing of our past, of our so-called sins, of the heaviness that we carry. And we are given this new opportunity through rebirth, through, again, be it through breathwork, be it through a sacrament. We have this experience of reconnecting to the soul, reconnecting to love, to our purpose, and letting all those other conditions of before behind. So it's fascinating symbolism, I believe.
It's really interesting. We can ask the new Pope if he wants to come into this podcast and explain something about this.
I don't think he would agree.
No, I don't think so. No. He wouldn't open up, I think. No. Maybe he doesn't know. Maybe he does. I don't know. Yeah. I can tell you something about my own experience because we once gave a course together with our three. And I went to my father just a Friday in front of that breathwork session with you.
It was holotropic breathwork, it was.
Yeah. And we did some, first we did some rebirthing breathwork in cold water. That was a very cold experience. And there was something happening in my mind. I really experienced that. I had to. I'm always mostly very sharp, but then something happened in my mind. And then we did holotropic breathwork. And my father, I came in a special state of mind, and my father came to my bed, and I was where I was laying, and he said, I'm going to say goodbye because I'm going to die in a short moment. And I was there on Friday, and he was still feeling well. He was old, 94 years old, but okay, he was a man of the day, so he could something happen with him. And then I came back. It was very emotional. And I came back, and I was talking to you guys, and he said, I was talking to my wife, and he said, oh, that's strange. Maybe you have to visit him. And I was calling him, and he doesn't live very close by. So, and he was all right. There was nothing happened. So I thought, okay, what's happening? And then on Friday morning, just 4 days later, he died. So it was really impressive. So, and then I was really interested in how breathwork works and how you can come into an altered state of consciousness, so you can see more and you can see more ahead.
Yes.
And very interesting. Yeah.
I think, I mean, in this case as well, I think what happens is the breathwork or an altered state of consciousness brings about a sort of a softening of the veils between the different worlds. Mm-hmm. And as the hardness of the ego filter softens, mm-hmm. you can hear differently, you can see and feel differently, and then that communication between, let's say, be it telepathic or be it soul communication between people, changes, which is, it's very beautiful. It's very encouraging that we can have that experience. And I know for you that was an important farewell that you could have, and that you could process this big rite of passage in your life.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, amazing.
So, and can you tell me something more about because you were born in Australia, and then you ended up in South Africa, and now you're in Sao Paulo.
Yes.
How did you come in all those places, and what brings you there? And can you tell me something more about that?
So, yeah, I mean, my dad was a geologist, so we moved a lot between Australia and South Africa. And then, going to Sao Paulo was pretty much a calling. I discovered shamanic practices, and again, like the breathwork process in my early 20s, in my early 30s, I had a calling to shamanic practices, and life kind of took me to Sao Paulo. I kind of didn't have a choice. There was a new relationship started, and I met a teacher in Sao Paulo, a Peruvian teacher in Sao Paulo, and then I started working there, and it was just one of those cases where the doors opened in life that you can't deny. It was I had to follow those doors that were opening up for me, and that's where I am. I never thought, 5 years before, I never thought I'd be ending up in Brazil, but here we go.
What about that shamanic practices, and how does that path look like? And what do you learn? And how can you compare that to other healing traditions in the world? And you studied a lot, so I'm very interested in it.
Yeah, I mean, like everything, it's a language. It's a different language. Like you work with Chinese medicine, that's a specific language from a specific culture. Mm-hmm. Shamanic practice, I mean, there's obviously a lot of talk, and shamanism is kind of fashionable at the moment. But fundamentally, I believe what shamanism is it learns to listen to nature, or it observes nature, or it works directly with the spirits of nature, also to access the other worlds. So be that through plant medicine, be that through herbal medicines, be that through the teachings of, let's say, animals, or, of the natural world. That is the language it uses. But it pretty much works with altered states of consciousness as well, of be that a ritual, be that a ceremony. It's creating a sacred space. It's creating a safe space for one to let go of the ego, let go of the body, and have an ecstatic experience or a altered state of consciousness experience in a safe way that the ego can kind of say, okay, it's fine for me to do this, and then from there to go wherever you need to go. And I think that's the beautiful thing about any trance is, unless if you have really bad things happening on the outside, bad influences, which obviously is not desirable, you're always going to go to exactly where your soul wants you to go. You're going to have that meeting point with your soul. And I believe, our soul's kind of with us the whole time, and maybe the soul has a kind of agenda. I don't think the soul is impatient, but, there's certain things that we need to do in life, and there's certain callings and passions we have in life. So when we open that space through whatever practice to meet the soul, we'll get the information that we need. And that is what allows us to have vision. So that the shamanism is a language of nature, a language of plants that allows us to enter that space.
Maybe that is also interested to dive a little bit deeper in the elements, because when I look to your work and learn from you, and I think, you work with the elements, the 4 elements or the 5 elements. So I think they're a very important foundation in that shamanic teachings. Can you share maybe a little bit more? Because I think there's also interested relation with that, with the work of André.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Yeah, so, the 4 elements, earth, water, air, fire, are the elements of physicality. And then the 5th element is the element of soul or spirit. And each one of those elements, first of all, exist in the body, let's say. And if we want to sort of speak schematically, I'm sure it's kind of similar in Chinese medicine too. Again, it's just a different language, but same principles. Air is the breath, and it's also the mind, symbolically speaking. And that's why, for example, when you do conscious breath work, you're specifically addressing the mind. You're specifically addressing consciousness.
Inspiration.
Yeah.
Bringing the spirit in.
Yeah, exactly. And then, the element of earth is the physical body, the bones, and all the physical things in our world. The element of water is our emotions, our relationships. But also, when we work physically with the element of water, for example, that element cleanses and washes and works with and opens us to emotional release and emotional cleansing. So, in the breath work that I practice, for example, a lot of work is done with the elements, like, for example, doing breath work in water. That is a means of cleansing your emotional body on a very profound energetic level. And then the element of fire, of course, is kind of our digestion. It's kind of, the heat, the warmth in the body, as well as the aura. So those are the 4 elements, and all humans have those 4 elements, symbolically speaking. But then, and all humans are kind of the same on an elemental level, except it's the 5th element, the soul element, that makes each one of us an individual. We have a different purpose. We have a different journey in life to travel. Even identical twins have a different journey, even though genetically they might be basically exactly the same. So, those elements are not only inside us, but also outside. And these elements become powers. And if you go further into ritual and ritual magic practice, the elements become allies, let's say, that you can work with, to work with the wind, or to build a relationship with the element of fire, for example, to build your life force, to build your energy, so that you can become a more powerful manifester or magician or whatever, or shaman. So the process, and this kind of goes back to what, your question about shamanism. I believe a lot of this is about creating alliances, friendships, resonances, let's say, with different plants. So a shaman can specifically work with particular ailments or, particular conditions, or very much create an alliance with a particular plant. For example, in Peru, you've got people who work specifically only with tobacco, and they spend years and years and years dieting tobacco, drinking it, smoking it, working with it on different levels, so that tobacco becomes an ally and a power they can use in healing others, as one example. Same thing with the elements. We can develop these relationships with the elements. And breath work is developing a relationship with the element of air, of course, and therefore of mind, and therefore of higher consciousness. But the beauty of breath work is, because in the West, in modern life, given the amount of distraction that we have, given the amount of, basically distraction we have, our minds, our mental ability isn't developed in a deeper way because we're constantly pulled out by other things from the outside. So when we practice this deep breath work, we allow a deeper frequency of mind, a calm frequency first of all, but then a deeper frequency that we can start to process, the deeper beliefs, let's say. And then we can bring in the higher consciousness or the higher mind or the inspired mind or the soul perspective. Mm-hmm.
So healing starts from the spirit. Or
yes, I believe
that conclusion with you, or
definitely.
Do they start with the body and the physical elements, and then invite the spirit?
No, I think it's.
But it's a combination.
I think it's a combination, but I think it's probably more from the spirit or the soul or our own willingness, let's say, to release the conditions that we put on ourselves that make us sick, be those emotional, be those mental, or be those other traumas. It's, let's say, energy that we hold onto on some level. And when we kind of expand our consciousness, and that expanded state allows us to look back in on ourselves, then we can release those things because they no longer seem so huge and so insurmountable that we are at the mercy of them. If let's say, schematically speaking, this is your illness or this is your issue sitting here, when you expand your consciousness bigger and you can actually look back on it and you can actually realize, well, I'm kind of in the driver's seat here and I am bigger than my ailment, and then we can release that because it no longer sits so tightly within us.
So that's totally different than Western medicine.
Yeah, I'd say so.
But what is your perspective then? Because you have 30 years of experience in healing and in helping people with also health, a lot of health questions.
I think it's good to take care of the body. Take care of the body very well, especially with food and what you eat. It will have influence in your health. But I'm really I started as a physical therapist and then became a manual therapist, and then thought, okay, there's something more in this world than only the physical body. So I started to do Chinese medicine and acupuncture and Chinese herbs. And all the way my path, I became a healer because I know that I didn't have to use needles anymore. I could transform that energy in the patient just by sitting next to him and changing something in the field. And then the field in the patient and the energy field in the patient also changes. So what I saw was that the body is a kind of vehicle where you manifest yourself, but it's also a kind of a projection of mind, of spirit. And so you can become ill because your body has maybe the wrong food. But if you have a very strong spirit and a very good energy, you can compensate that. But if you have your body in a good shape, but you have problems in your spirit, you can make your body ill without, it won't take very long. But so when you see a psychiatric patient, you still see them always walking a little bit strange. Everything is connected. You can see it on your body posture. You don't feel happy. You sit a little bit in this, and you feel energetic. You sit like this. Everything is influenced by your spirit. Yeah. And so I see the body as, okay, there is one part, you get it from your parents and you feed it, but the energy and the spirit has a very, very strong influence in how you will feel.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we get so attached to certain states of mind or states of emotion, and they then manifest as these ailments. Yeah. So then it kind of becomes the willingness to detach from certain states that allows healing.
Yeah. And I think that Western medicine sees illness as a little bit of bad luck. Okay. And then you're a victim. Mm-hmm. And the victim has a totally different perspective, as that you say, okay, I don't know how I can solve it. Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I something happened to me and it has made an imprint. But I'm not a victim. I'm still the leading man or women in this world, and so maybe I can change something, and maybe I need help, but I can still change something.
But when it starts, when your first, I think, interaction with the Chinese medicine, that was in Japan, I guess.
Yeah.
But then you was also dependent on the help of doctors, and so I'm interested in.
It was not my first.
Because you were, I don't want to say that you were a victim, but you had. Yeah, maybe it's good to share what was happening there because you needed help.
I was there in Japan for a karate tournament in Fukushima. Everybody knows it now because of the. But I won that tournament as a first non-Japanese in that particular karate style, and then 3 days later I had a pneumonia. I was already a little bit ill on the tournament, and then I went to a doctor, and the doctor was also a Chinese medicine doctor, but also a very good Western doctor. But I already was interested in Chinese medicine, and about the way the spirit works into the body. So, but in that time, maybe it was 35 years ago. Yeah, 35 years ago, 1990. In the Western world, they would almost kill you if you were a Western practitioner and do something in this style. So, and then I thought, okay, in this whole world, on the other side of the world, on this country, it's just integrated. It's very interesting. And so it's possible to integrate those two worlds together. Mm-hmm. And then I started to study. When I came back, I started to study Chinese medicine. I was training in 3 days again after my pneumonia. So he used antibiotics, also, but he also used Chinese herbs and all kinds of other things. And in 3 days I was not fit, but I was really good, and I was good enough to do something again.
Yeah. And a little younger.
Yeah, a little younger also, yeah. That helps.
That helps also.
And I had a good basis, I think. But it was interesting, and that was really a big change in my life. Yeah. So.
Yeah, amazing.
And your work, can you tell me something more about that?
About my work?
Yeah.
I think. What do you want to know? Because I think you have some experience with my work, so maybe
I can tell.
Maybe I give you the.
Yeah, I can tell.
It's always easier to share from experience. It's.
We met at when I was doing my healing work. I had sometimes when I do a lot of patients a day. Maybe 17 or 20 a day. And at the end of the week, I start to getting a little bit cold in myself, and because maybe I didn't transform quick enough all the gold energies of the patients. And then I saw a course, and on that course it was from Tuku Lobsang, a Tibetan teacher, and he would give a course in Tumo, and Tumo is inner fire. So the Tibetan monks are very famous about their practice of Tumo, so they can sit outside in the cold, minus 20 degrees, and then steam their their clothes dry when they're wet, and stay warm inside. And he was giving the authentic Tibetan Tumo practice. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. Let's go and see what he was doing. And I was sitting there and on my meditation pillow. And behind me there was Jeroen, but I'm 2 meters and 3 centimeters, and Jeroen is not that big. So I was saying, "Hey, Jeroen, can you?"
I'm normal, and he is not normal in this like that.
And that became the beginning of our friendship. It was really, really funny. And then in our practice we had to change something. And I knew Jeroen was doing some transformation work. He worked for several organizations. And Jeroen, we talked about it, and then I said, "Can you help me?" And he helped us with our practice to do some transformation practices, and we exchanged a lot of things, and it really worked. So a lot of things changed in our practice. So it's a kind of healing too, I think. and but then you heal organizations. So it's really interesting to have you here also, and you're more into the spiritual part now than in the organizational part.
But what I liked from that time, André, because I think it was 2 years ago that you asked me that question, that I said, I can help you, but I also want to learn from you, because I was always fascinated. What is he doing? Because if you are explaining what you're doing, it's, for most people, difficult to understand. So that was one of the reasons that, okay, I can help you with your organization, because for me it was a relatively small organization compared to, for example, the police with 60,000 people. Hilhus, your health center, has 20 therapists. So it was for me, I think, okay, I think I can help you to have a look at the organization and dynamics in the organization. And what I learned in that weeks was that the work, what we are all doing, is not so different. Because you look to the body as a system, and to the body, the mind, and the spirit. And that was exactly the same way how I look to an organization and the dynamics in between people in an organization, or the dynamics in between the owners of the center or the partners of the center, and most important, the personal journeys of the owners in the center. And that was fascinating for me too, to dive deeper in each other's journeys and learn what we all need. And I think it was about space, in your case.
Yeah.
And what the center needs space in innovation. And I think it starts with you. So we create space for you.
So I can do this.
And we went
kind
to
of
the
things.
Pyrenees. Now we went to the Pyrenees to see from different space, and in creating spaces how you could make a change in your health center.
Mm-hmm.
And that was for me, I think, that is the main part of my work nowadays. It's always about creating space in yourself and outside yourself. And that mechanism is not difficult, because I see nowadays with everybody where I work with, or an organization, it's always about what kind of space can you create for yourself in yourself, and from there outside yourself in what kind of change or transformation you will always create.
But I mean, either the individual or the organization needs to feel safe in making that transition, and that's probably what the art is. All healing, I think, is creating a safe space for that surrender to happen, that you can actually let go of the old stuff and then see the new vision, let's say.
Yeah, and that is for me what facilitating a process is. And in this case, in your center, it was about, okay, what is the world of the therapist? How do they perceive the dynamics in an organization? And from that safe space to here where everybody is, you can create something else. But it's what you say. I think the main principle in transformation is safety and security. Because when you feel safe, you can open, and when you can be open, you can express.
And transition always feels unsafe, so you've got to bring safety into an unsafe situation.
Yeah, maybe that is my my work. But it is, it's always helpful for me to ask others to help me a little in the language, because
It's for me, space is also compassion, because every illness is a manifestation of duality. And and most people are stuck in their problem. They're like kind of fixed. And compassion is, for me, as a kind of emotion and a kind of energy who is closest to non-duality. So you put somebody in a bath of non-duality, so it can dissolve. The stuck energy can dissolve in the non-duality.
It opens the space for that.
And then you have to invite the spirit to put the new the whole construct he wants to develop in this life without all the conditions. And then you see that people can transform. And I think that's maybe the same what you do in your work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is the creating space. And again, it's going to unconditional space. And obviously the word unconditional has got different interpretations.
Yeah.
But, it's a space without conditions, and then it's unconditional love as well, where you can be, you can have the openness to become anything that you want to be, or the openness to become what you always wanted to be, that you can then see further. I think so much of it has to do with vision. But, as you know, it's often when people don't feel love or compassion for themselves, they actually can't give back to themselves because there are other imprints of sabotage, let's say, or of preventing certain things from happening just because it just feels out of one's personal repertoire. So even that opening space just opens space for us to receive as well, which I think is a big part of healing and of manifestation is you can be the best healer in the world, but if the person doesn't want to receive that space that you create, they're not going to heal.
No, at the end, they have to do it themselves. Yeah.
Yes, but they have to receive it.
Yeah, and to receive it also, yeah.
But maybe it's nice to dive a little deeper in that topic of space and dreams. I was thinking about that because maybe you can share something, Jacques, about your dream and what kind of spaces you want to do the work, because the relation between also the space where you do the work of this work, what is about space, is very important. And can you share a little about that vision?
Yeah, well, I think we're in a time in the world where many of the monolithic Orthodox religions don't speak to people anymore, certainly in the West. And we're kind of in a little bit of a vacuum in terms of what is our true spirituality. And I think that's where shamanism has some answers, is yes, we can have an abstract connection to the divine and to spirit, but it's really important that we have some sort of tangible connection to spirit as well. And apart from our own personal process, a lot of that can be in the mountains or in the forests or in the trees, reconnecting to the elements, within ourselves. So I think it's about starting to, what I'm very passionate about is working with, let's say, forces of nature as archetypes, which you could call gods and goddesses, to find our inspiration again and to find a sense of a grounded spirituality.
You wrote a book about that, huh? About
yes,
archetypes.
Yes. So I've actually got two. I've got the cards, the classical mythology deck, which is about the archetypes of classical mythology. I think any mythological system is a narrative, a way of understanding certain archetypes. Classical, Greek, Roman is one of those systems. But they all reconnect back to the forces of nature, let's say. And then the book that I wrote is this book, Living Mythology, which is about finding how or which archetypes work through us, which archetypes we are naturally connected to, which become our powers, or they can actually become destructive forces in our lives. So working with archetypes is really about understanding ourselves first, and then learning to see what works against us within ourselves, and then what works with us or for us, and how we can then develop that power to really create the lives that we want.
So maybe it's a good example. I pulled a card and in front of this first podcast, and it is Tartaros.
Right.
So Jacques, can you tell me something more? Because I see the deepest pit. So I throw myself in the deepest pit with this podcast, I think. In English, for me.
Well, Tartaros, like Hades, is the archetype of the underworld, and it's a place of deep reflection. It's a place of rebirth. It's a place of going into, let's say, the unknown. The darkness of the unknown. The underworld is always the place of the unknown, where we find the treasure of some sort. And in order to find gold, or we need to dig deep into the earth. In order to find the light, we need to also go into darkness to see the light in new ways or experience it in new ways. And that's the classic story of the hero's journey. Many of the mythological themes work around that. So in your case, it's very much about going into those depths to find the treasure, whatever that treasure is.
At the end of your comfort zone, life begins. Something like that.
Exactly. It's a calling to something new.
Yeah. And you painted all those pictures, or not?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did those in oil paint.
Yeah.
That was my COVID project.
That's really nice.
It was Jacques' therapy during COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I build something in my garden, so
you need a project.
I needed the projects also. Yeah, it's very interesting. And you wrote a book about tarot, I know.
Yeah, this book I wrote many years ago, but it's also just the building blocks of tarot. It's looking at the different building blocks, like the elements, for example, and in the suits, the wands or the pentacles or the cups suits, you've got the element, but then you've also got the numerology, the number. So there you've got two building blocks that create meaning. And then in the major arcana, which is the sort of main picture cards that are known by everyone, death, the high priestess, the wheel of fortune, etc. That is actually a map of this archetypal journey, the hero's journey. There's a lot of talk about the hero's journey now as well. I think that goes back to your question earlier as well. What is the bigger vision? It's learning to find our place in the journey of our own hero's journey through, let's say, certain archetypes or symbolic stories that we can relate to, and that those stories can actually heal. And then when we do breathwork, something like breathwork, for example, or shamanic work, we actually can learn to see ourselves within the story, and then we can use those stories to heal. And that, of course, can be an individual story, or it can be a collective story. And, the world where we are now is kind of at the end of one story, and we need to envision new stories as to where we go from here. And the very interesting thing about the tarot, for example, is it's actually kind of a map of life and a map of consciousness. It's not a superstitious gypsy tool. It kind of gives a map of the different initiations we go through in life, be that into motherhood and fatherhood, or be that into different phases, new different phases in our lives. It's an archetypal journey that kind of all humans have gone through at some point in their lives. So
it's very direct, because 2 years ago I walked with Jacques the Camino to Santiago de Compostela. And sometimes Jacques is good to also create resistance in me.
Okay.
Because the first question in that Camino was that we all could choose an archetype which we want to embody. And I thought, we need to choose an archetype. And for me it was a little bit far in how I normally work and how I look to spirituality. But I could see how powerful it is when you really dive deeper into an archetype, like in my case, like Hermes. Important archetype in transformation and in the energy of bridging worlds. But to do it and to walk that every day with the characteristics of this specific archetype or energy, that's very powerful. And for me, it was eye-opener because I felt, okay, do I need to change my name, an archetype, because that was part of the exercise. You change your name, and everybody in that group, because Jacques is always walking with groups, this kind of pilgrimages, everybody choose a name what was related to that archetype. And we say that name, that whole Camino, that whole 21 days in that process, we speak to each other by that names. But if you use other names to each other, if you don't know, because the people came from all over the world, you directly change everything because you think, oh, there's another name. And because someone is saying that name to you, you feel, okay, I can be something else. I can be someone else. I can create other characteristics, and I can practice that for 21 days. That was for me, I found it fascinating, and it was a lot of fun in the end. And that shows me a totally different perspective of what a spiritual journey can be, because you can play with it. And but the most important thing is every day when you wake up, you need to work on it, or not need, but you can work on it, and you can create something else in your life. And for me, the work with archetypes, I never worked with archetypes in the past, or I read a little bit about the work of Carl Jung, but for me it was a huge eye-opener that it's so practical. Yeah, and I think that is important in your work, that it's very practical in how we can practice it every day, and not only on your meditation cushion, in life, in interaction with other people, in what you create in life.
And that's literally an example of that, English term, walking your talk. It's actually, and again, obviously the Camino is literally walking it, but you're walking a new character into your life. And I think that's the reason why I do that is because, yes, you literally learn to invoke and embody something else, or you learn to focus on and embody the characteristics of the person that you want to be. And that takes us from that space of maybe dealing with, let's say, your past traumas and the stuff that keeps you stuck. And from there you go into that space of becoming the magician, where you say, okay, this has been my archetype and this has been the blockages that this archetype has brought me. But now I choose to call in another energy, and I consciously create a different way of interacting with the world, interacting with my own inner world, but also with other people. So it's kind of that simple. It's fun and it's playful, but it's actually kind of that simple. It's a question of where we put our attention and how we concentrate on that and focus on that.
When you speak about walk the talk, maybe it's nice to share something about your next pilgrimage.
Yeah, I've been doing the Camino de Santiago in Spain. I've done that about 17 times with groups and as a personal journey. And I'm going to Rome next month,
Nice.
or later this month. And I'm going to specifically explore some of the Etruscan sites there, a lot of Etruscan caves, very, very interesting energy points. And then in South Lazio, which is south of Rome. So I'm going to walk into Rome and then I'm going to walk out of Rome. In South Lazio, there are very interesting ancient cities, pre-Roman cities that look like Peru, actually. The stonework, the polygonal stonework looks like Peru. And one of the mysteries for me, number one, is why nobody talks about these cities. And number two is the fact that these are very real PowerPoints. Rome didn't become what Rome was for no reason. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't because of good trade or a good geographical. Well, it was a good geographical position. Something was happening there in early history, and part of that is these exceptional places that were built to build the energy in that area. And in these different PowerPoints of the world, the veils are thinner. We can connect more, let's say, to either the other world or to our vision or to the earth itself. And we get healed in those places because the energy is so open, and the energy creates space again, going back to that theme of creating space. The energy creates space for us to expand more into who we can be. And I know that's something that you also talk about a lot.
Yeah,
you want to talk more about
environment.
That?
If you're already in a space where the energy has a very nice, loving, caring energy, it's much easier to let go than Absolutely. If you were in a space who's a little bit in a pressure. So I don't know why they can build hospitals sometimes like that.
Yes,
you have to heal there, and then it's so clinical.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So if you look at our practice, it's totally different. yeah. Very nice. And so you're doing this kind of things, the pilgrimage, and you're giving workshops and breathwork. What's your plan for the coming years?
To do more pilgrimages. I'm hoping to go to Japan soon as well. I also do breathwork retreats in Bali, and we go to some of the sacred temples, sacred places. We experienced that last year, where we were able to go into a very sacred. I don't really know what to call it. It wasn't a crypt, but a sacred man-made cave, where certain kings of Bali have done a lot of work. And again, in there, the energy, the acoustics are so incredible. It just creates a whole other experience.
And nature there, it was a combination of
absolutely
waterfalls, nature. There was a temple in itself, but
and the care of the people. The way in which people take care of the sacredness of the space. You literally step into a different reality. And that. So and I'll be doing, I do workshops in Europe, in the US, and so forth.
Sounds very good. Yeah. And what's your plan?
My plan? Huh? I'm selling my house. So one of my transformations now is to leave the city of Amsterdam, city where I'm born. And also to explore more in this field of facilitating breathwork. So that is part of my plan. And my other plan is to follow my heart. So I met someone and she's living in the United States. So I'm exploring the next months where my next steps are in Europe and maybe also outside Europe. But the world is not so big. I could see in the past few years. So it's a year of exploration and building also my new foundation for work. Yeah. I'm still young, so yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. And your plan?
Oh, my plan is to open the world, to help the world, not to open, because that's not. I want to help to open the world of healing to a more consciousness, that they will become more consciousness about how the consciousness, how do you say that? This plays a big part in why people get ill, and I want to inform the world. What I notice is that if I do my work with one-on-one, it's still, maybe I do 70, 80 people a week. It's still a small group compared to the need in the world. So this is also why I want to do the podcast, to inform the people and to connect with people and to see what can we do more in the field of healing. And that's also our website, Compassion in Progress. We want to inform people. So want to go from detail to wholesale, and that's my plan. So
yeah, and you got a book as well.
Yeah, I got a book in Dutch. It's Laboratory of the Spirit, of Laboratorium of the Geest. It will be in English, and in a couple of months, maybe the title becomes a little bit different, but it's the same book, and it's a way how I think consciousness works in the body and into this reality. And I will explain that by in very simple steps. So amazing. That's my book. So thank you both for having this first podcast with me.
Thank you, André.
I enjoyed it very much, and let's see if we can do something more in this world.
We'll keep walking.
Thank you, André.
Thank you, André.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.